today's missionary is Steve Steuerwald, and good. So glad to be able to have you on with our services tonight.
It's great to join in here and be a part of it. Thank you.
Now, you're welcome. You're welcome. You have a unique ministry. I was going to see if you can explain a little bit more about that ministry, and then how long that Liberty has supported you and your family there.
Yes, we work at Ironwood Christian Camp. It's in
Okay.
Southern California, and our goal really is to serve churches on the West and really come alongside of them, not take the place, but actually provide them with tools that they can use to help equip their people to do the work of God wherever they're at. So we
Yeah, that's
do a
awesome.
number of camps and just a number of camps that would just provide for that, from anywhere from adult camps to kid camps, just come alongside of churches there. We have been supported by Liberty probably for the last, oh man, it's been probably 6-7 years now, I believe.
Yeah.
That you have teamed up with us and been a part of what we're doing. It may have been a little bit longer, but
Yeah.
we appreciate you guys being a part of what is going on. And you are, as many decisions have been made, you are a part of all of that.
Yeah, I gotta say, I love your green screen behind you, the setup that you have going on. I really, actually,
Good
no,
old Starbucks parking lot.
you're meeting a pastor actually as we're meeting together. You're going to be meeting a pastor here shortly. So I appreciate your ministry and what you've done through that. So with camping ministry, somebody may have never actually been involved with a camping ministry. So what's entailed with that? And then afterwards, after that question, I want to ask you a few questions that we've kind of pulled to be able to ask you.
Good. We actually do two types of camps. We do a sponsor where we do everything. We bring in a speaker. We have activities that happen. We have sessions both morning and evening, and meals as well. But again, it's all centered around, depending on what retreat that is, it's geared towards strengthening families, serving local churches, and reaching young people. So that one's that way. Custom camps, churches can come in and use our facility. We do everything for them, but they're able to come in with a church group and be able to run a camp and bring their own speaker. Again,
Sure.
Our whole goal is to facilitate whatever's happening with that church.
Yeah. I love the ministry. In fact, was it back in the 70s, early 70s?
72 the camp started.
Oh,
yes.
Wow. So next year will be a big highlight for that ministry. And so, well, I want to ask you this. There's 3 questions we want to ask you, and our time will be done this evening. But the first question is this: obviously, being in a camp ministry, there's challenges, but there's great victories. And so, what is one of the most creative ways that you've seen somebody trust Christ?
Probably it's an interesting way, because it's always neat to see how God works with people and how he changes them. And probably for me, it would be the word powerful, to be able to see God powerfully change a life. And it would have been in a men's retreat that we had. A group came in, and one of the guys that came, he was probably in his 40s. But everything that was about that person spoke to gang related, whether what he wore, how he talked, all of that. The first services, he actually got up and left partway through the service. And the last service, the last 2 services, he was a part of that whole process. And it was neat to see God just continue to work in his heart, to where the last service, right after it was all done, he accepted the Lord as his personal savior.
Wow.
And to see a guy that was all about himself and, using the Lord's name in vain often, to where that didn't change overnight, but
Sure.
we got to see somebody who definitely, you could see a difference in his life. And that happened a year ago, to where he came back this year. Matter of fact, he was there a couple of weeks ago, and just singing all of the songs and just praising the Lord, which was really cool.
Awesome.
It wasn't just a decision that was made, it was a decision that actually transformed his life. And he's a part of the church, and just really going at it. It's pretty neat to see that happen.
As you're telling me this story, I'm literally getting goosebumps. It's exciting to see the Holy Spirit work and God just impacting people's lives. And that's really what it's all about, the camping ministry, introducing
Correct.
people to Christ and getting that initial, whether for him, it may have been the very first time that somebody had tried to share Christ with them, or it may have been the 7th or 8th time. But I love it as people are are involved in sharing truth. Now, I want to ask you this, being our second question, is who's somebody that has impacted your life, or has there been somebody that's mentored you specifically? And then if so, who is that?
Yeah, there's a number of guys I could look back to. Probably the most influential guy in my life would have been my youth pastor, and his name was Ed Richards.
Okay.
He did it. Did youth ministry at the church that I was at as a lay youth pastor, and his job was actually in the police force. And it was a guy that invested in me, not just at church, but he invested me outside of church. He invited me. I did ride-alongs with him, got to really just kind of see what he did, be a part of his life. And he came to events that were important to me, sporting events that I was involved in. But really what he did was constantly spoke truth to me from God's word, and speaking truth to my heart. And I know that impacted me. I still to this day look back to that investment as something that really turned my life from living for myself to really saying, you know what, this is what I'd like to do. I'd like to live for God.
Yeah.
And it just invested in me.
Sometimes a layperson is somebody that, may have a job that where they're out in the workforce, come in, they serve every week. What a powerful story that is, to be able to see the impact that now you are. I mean, I think there was close to 1,000. You'll tell us, I guess, in a little bit, but how many people trusted Christ last year? But on an average year, hundreds, if not thousands of people come to know Christ as a result of your ministry. But yet he has a part of, which sometimes we think, oh, I'm just helping out in the kids class. I'm just passing an offering plate. I'm just greeting somebody as they come into church. You have no idea the impact that you make in somebody's life. And I'm so glad, have no idea probably where you would be probably had he not invested in your life, right?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
amazing. One of the other things that you said about him is you said he spoke truth. Sometimes it's difficult conversation to have, but speaking truth in the lives of other people, but so valuable, so important, and so needed. The last question we want to ask you is this, I know this past year has been difficult for many, but what has helped you carry through the difficult times?
That's a great question. I'm going to speak to two different situations.
Okay.
One of them goes to just at camp itself. So you would have talked about the decisions that were made. 2020 was a year that we saw decisions down, but it wasn't because God was not working. We have a theme at camp that one is worth more than all, and that our investment in just seeing one person come to know the Lord is worth all the effort and time that we put into ministry, into working with people. That said, we saw more than that. There was probably in that 500 range where we got to see that many young people as well as adults get saved this last year.
You said 500.
500, and that was with, and here's where the hardship would have come. In March, when COVID hit, we actually shut down camp, and all of us that were there working went to working construction, and we had 108 straight days where we did not have campers on the property, no income coming into camp. And if you know our ministry, we have a pretty large facility. God has blessed us in that way, but that equates to about $4,000 to $5,000 per day is the cost of what it would do for us to be able to run camp.
So you're looking at about $50,000 of revenue that you'd never see as a result of that was budgeted and things like that, of being able to help people.
Yeah, it's actually quite a bit more than that. I think when we looked at it, it's probably right around that $400,000 of cost to the facility and those days that we were off.
Gotcha.
Yet we saw God provide in ways. We actually called it our ravens, where God provided for us.
Wow.
And he did it so many different ways. And one of the things I learned through that process is that with God, there is no limit. With God, if that is exactly what he wants to have happen, no matter what pestilence, no matter what situation is going on, God can provide, and he does it in incredible ways. And for us, we just have to place our hope in him and continue to keep day by day living for him And then it's fun because we get to watch him work and
Yeah.
provide. And it wasn't just in big lump sums. It was just people who just said, I want to be a part of what's going on. I want things to keep going.
Yeah.
And we got to the end of the year and our budget, we actually were able to meet budget at the end of the year, even
Wow.
with 108 straight days without campers on the property. So that was all of God, not of us, and
Yeah.
just fun to see him work in and through that process.
Yeah.
Probably the other big one where God worked would have been about 5.5 years ago. My father passed away, and my dad pastored all of his life. I grew up in ministry.
Mm.
He was a guy that I looked up to. He was been a pillar of our family, not
Sure.
just mine, but the Steuerwald family in as a whole. He grew up with nine total siblings, and my grandparents, and a one bathroom farmhouse
Yeah.
in Wisconsin. And but he just continued to live for God all the way through it. But when he passed away, probably the things that really helped me through that process. One was I heard about it. We got a call at 2 o'clock in the morning that he had passed away, and we were trying to figure out how in the world we're going to get out there. And he wasn't dead at that time. They put him on a machine so that we could actually come out there.
Okay.
And by 11 o'clock that morning, I had a pastor friend of mine and their church that paid for and rented a van so that we drove to Las Vegas, picked up a van, and continued to drive and drove across. And I had other people pay for the gas for that. I had a number of people just prayed, and through friends, through church family. Church was huge through that process as we went through that trial. And
Yeah.
yet, I would say that church is a big deal. It's a hard one as I kind of look at people that aren't plugged into a church, a good local church. That's a hard thing to go through, a hard situation when you don't have that support, and that was
Yeah.
huge for me and my family to be
Yeah.
able to go out, to be able to grieve, to be able to work through that process. So people, friends, gifts, just people willing to sacrifice in order to help somebody else out. That was a huge help in a hard time.
Yeah, for sure. In fact, there's several questions that you've answered. A big part of that, it was about church. The
It
most creative. I mean, obviously, had it not been for churches being involved with Ironwood, you wouldn't be able to see people saved. But then the
correct.
person that invested in your life was a layman, but he just surrendered his life to, okay, I'm going to help kids and youth program, and even through the difficult times, you've seen God do great and mighty things as a result of church and being involved in church. So what a
Correct.
privilege it is to kind of peek into your ministry and see what God's doing. And so we look forward. We love coming out there with our junior campers and teens. Will be out there in July. But I wanted to see what are maybe two areas specifically that we can pray for you, or maybe personally, or for the ministries. Two specific ways.
For the camp, just continue to pray as we go forward. The Lord has blessed this year. The numbers have been up as far as campers go. So right now we're in a transition of figuring out, do we hire more staff? Do we, in order to help us be able to serve churches well? So
Okay.
figure out that and coming up with the right fits for that as well. And then for myself personally and my family, we'll be doing quite a bit of travel here in the next little bit. So just pray for safety. I'm actually traveling. I'm flying out in a week to go out and then drive my daughter across country back out here as she finishes up at college and then starts her career as she starts teaching here in the fall in California. So be
Yeah.
driving across, but just pray for good conversations,
Okay.
not just safety, but good conversations with my kids. And I'm thankful they all love the Lord, serve the Lord, and are faithful to church and all of that. But just want
Yeah.
to have good conversations where one of the things I've been challenged with this year is the idea that in my conversations, do people know more about my God in the conversations that I've had with people? So as I leave that conversation, we talk about sports. I love sports. We talk about so many other things. I could talk about just camp in general,
Yeah.
but I could talk about my God, and I want to do that with my family, with my kids, and I want them to just know more about God. as
Yeah.
I have opportunity to talk with them.
Awesome. Thank you
Great.
so much for allowing us to be a part of your ministry and sharing a little bit of what's going on. And thank you for letting us pray with you as well. Any last thoughts that you have maybe for the church?
No, I just want to thank the church for coming alongside of us, not just financially, but just in prayer support. That means a lot to us. We need the prayer, and much prayer is much power. We want God to work
Yeah.
in its lives. So we appreciate your partnership in our ministry and in our family, and we'll look forward to many more years as we get to serve God alongside of each
Absolutely.
other and together. So it's cool.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. Well,
It's investments like this that reap dividends for the future. What a privilege it is to be able to support them and their families and families all across this world. May God use us to continue to impact this world for the cause of Christ. Thanks so much for tuning in to Wednesday Around the World.